Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying?
Othram Laboratories did DNA on that knife sheath, and they came back with a group of 4 biological brothers. I did not know this. None of us knew that they were connected to the knife sheath until this interview. Prior to that, we knew that their blood had been found on the handrail going down to the first floor, the front door. They are known as Unknown Male B. Unknown Male B. Until this book came out and Brent Turvey did this interview, we did not know that they were also connected to the knife sheath. The knife sheath that we've been led to believe had a mixture of Kaylee, Maddie, and an unknown male's DNA on the outside of it. Not true. There is no mixture. It is only these brothers.
Why you always lying?
Have you been living under a rock? Because this has been known since the transcript came out of the January 23rd, 2025 hearing. The same one that you claim you listened to. So it talks about the 4 brothers, but they were associated with the knife sheath, okay? And Unknown Male B had nothing to do with the 4 brothers. The DNA from the knife sheath is what was sent to Othram, not Unknown Male B, okay? So let's look at some highlights from that transcript. So this is when Brett Payne was on the stand, and he says the DNA from the knife sheath was obviously the one thing we had that we thought was a very strong piece of evidence in this case. So it was that particular piece that we pursued as a potential avenue of identifying the suspect. So this was Payne still on the stand. He was asked, what efforts did you make to pursue Unknown Male B? You have to be more specific. I don't remember exactly where Unknown Male B came from. And Taylor asked him, if I told you the lab report showed Unknown Male B came from a blood spot on the handrail going between the second and first floor, does that help your memory? Payne answered, yes, ma'am. So Anne said, why did you not pursue that person? And Payne said, at this point in time, we had already received inmate 163214's name. And from what my understanding was, entering another DNA profile into CODIS. And that's where he went on not understanding about why it wasn't entered into CODIS. But that right there was him talking about why they didn't pursue Unknown Male B. Okay? Unknown Male B was tested against the people they had blood samples from, and when they didn't get a match, it wasn't entered into CODIS because it did not qualify to be entered into CODIS, and that's where it ended. It was not sent to Othram. It was Unknown Male A, the knife sheath DNA, that was sent to Othram. Now, to further reiterate that Unknown Male B was not sent to Othram, we have this from Supplement S1, Exhibit S1 that just came out recently. And it says, in regard to Male B, this profile was not entered into CODIS based on the location of the profile within the residence and the proximity of the profile to the victims. This was a large residence occupied by several college students. And it goes on to say the handrail was a frequently touched area which could not be directly linked to the crime. Also, the proximity of the profile to the victims makes it difficult to ensure it is attributable to the perpetrator. The probative value of the profile, Male B, is not as high as that of the unknown male profile, Male A, obtained from the knife sheath, as the victims were believed to have been stabbed to death, and the knife sheath was located next to one of the victims. So, that was why it was not put into CODIS, and it was not pursued further. So continuing on with highlights from the January 23rd, 2025 hearing, Rylene Nolan was on the stand, and she was asked, now at some point later, your lab issued a report saying blank, matching the DNA on the sheath with DNA taken from inmate 163214. Is that right? And Rylene Nolan answered, that's correct, and a statistic was provided. Well, we know that there was a statistical match. That's what was provided. That was that 5.73 octillion. And so he was the match. The 4 brothers were not the match. Okay, let's go further into that hearing. This is Matthew Gamet now on the stand. He was also from the ISP lab, and they were asking him about Othram and the unknown male A. So they said, what communication did you have with Othram on the early end of that process? That's talking about the IgG. And he said, so to my recollection, our early communication on this case was providing them with the DNA that they would be able to develop, hopefully, an investigative lead for us on the case. After that sample, to my knowledge, had been that we had followed our processes through and that we had put a sample into CODIS and that we had not received any hits off of CODIS, and then we would proceed with the next step of the testing. So he was talking about how unknown male A had no hits in CODIS, so they were going to proceed with the IgG. Not unknown male B. unknown male A. This is Matthew Gamet still on the stand, and he was asked about when he helped deliver the DNA from the knife sheath down to Othram. So they said the DNA sample itself, that DNA sample was delivered by Moscow Police Department in person to them at Othram Labs. Did you have any role in that part? Gamet answered, I did. He was asked, what did you do? He said, I accompanied the officer from Boise down to Houston and down to the Othram laboratory. I didn't have possession of the sample, but I was with the investigator that did. So that's when they brought the DNA from the sheath down to Othram. And in case you still want to claim that what they brought down there was from the handrail, unknown male B, this proves it wasn't. This was from Dustin Blaker's report. He was who went down with Gamet. He said, after getting evidence checked into the lab, I signed for a DNA profile, which had been generated by the ISP forensic lab. This DNA profile was collected from a knife sheath, which was found by ISP investigators from District 2 during the initial search of 1122 King Road on November 13th. The sheath had been transported to the lab by ISP troopers. And then he goes on to talk about how they took that DNA sample down to Othram. And now we get to the part about the four brothers. And this was Leah Larkin that was on the stand at this point. So she was asked, when Othram quit work, were they following a family tree that they could have led and come to inmate 163214? And she answered yes. So based on my initial review of what they did, the crime scene profile was most likely descended from blank and blank, or perhaps from one of their siblings. It's hard to tell with DNA because it's not all third cousins share exactly the same amount of DNA. Some share more, some share less. It's just kind of statistics game you play. That couple had blank children, and so there conceivably could have been hundreds of descendants of this couple. I haven't seen the full tree. I've just seen that they had blank children. Othram chose one of those children and had tracked down, I believe, grandchildren, and there were four brothers. So the four brothers were on his family tree. Othram was on a tree that would have led to him. And then, of course, we know the FBI took over, expanded the search, and was able to narrow it to inmate 163214 and gave MPD that tip. So, you are wrong that it was unknown male B that was sent to Othram. It was unknown male A. We've known this ever since this report came out. Actually, we knew well before the report came out because the IGG had been discussed for a couple years as to how they got his name. What we didn't know about was the four brothers until that January 23rd hearing. But don't act like this was all unknown until your hero, Turvey, came out and said something. Because this has been known about for a long time. It's just you didn't understand how to read the damn documents, okay? That's what it is. You misinterpret things constantly. Also, the sheath was a mixture of Maddie and Kaylee on 1.4, but 1.1 was single source, and it was not the four brothers. It was inmate 163214.
November 15th, a man was found wandering around the downtown area of a town 30 miles from Moscow who had multiple stab wounds to his torso and upper extremities.
Why you always lying?
And you are lying again. Mowich was not found wandering in Lewiston. He was found several miles away, southeast of Lewiston, out in a rural area. He had crashed his pickup into some farmland, and he did not have stab wounds. That was not said in the ISP documents, and that's also not said in the documents that I FOIA'd from Nez Perce County. He had scratches. His blood sugar was also low, but his injuries were consistent with the vehicle accident that he had.
Now, there is a report that an informant gave. His name is Tyson Farley. That Nicholas Mowich was given a job to do at the King Road house because he was an enforcer for rug traffickers in that area. And he fucked it up, and that's why he got the injuries he sustained.
Why you always lying?
And you are wrong yet again. This was not Tyson Farley, and we know this was not Tyson Farley because Tyson Farley has never had any warrants out from Kootenai County, and the person who called in this fake tip had a warrant from Kootenai County and was extradited to Kootenai County, and that was confirmed by Brent Payne. So it was clearly not Tyson Farley. When Farley was arrested, he was extradited back to Latah County because that's where his warrant was out of. He has never had any arrests in Kootenai, and you can look it up on iCourt if you don't believe me. Also, nowhere in this does it mention Nicholas Mowich. The informant who made the false tip claimed that he witnessed a car accident between Lewiston and Moscow. But that car accident could not be found or verified, and Mowich's car accident was south of Lewiston, and it wasn't even at the same time frame as this person with the false tip was claiming. So Give it up, Natasha. It's not Farley, and he wasn't talking about Nicholas Mowich. Mowich was not an enforcer. He was not at 1122 King Road.
There is literally audio from the Linda Lane camera where Xana is saying, I see you, Farley.
Why you always lying?
Okay, so I'm going to play the clip from Linda Lane, and I personally can barely hear anything. I can't tell if it's Farley, I can't tell if it's Carly, like something that rhymes with that, but I'll play it and you can decide. And no, I'm not going to manipulate the audio like other people do. Okay, so now my question for you is, how do you know that's Xana? You claim you're always factual, that you only bring factual things. So Natasha, where's your proof that that's Xana? And also, where's your proof that it's talking about Tyson Farley? Because you do also understand that if that is the name Farley being said, there was a University of Idaho student, a young woman with the last name of Farley as well, that was attending at the same time. So how do we know they weren't calling her? Or it could have been a pet that someone was calling. So please, since you're always factual and always bring receipts, show your proof that that was Xana and show your proof that that was talking about Tyson Farley.
In a report that the doctors made to the police that was never investigated, by the way, they said that the wounds he had looked like defensive wounds from a knife attack.
Why you always lying?
I would love to know where you're seeing anywhere in any report that it was from defensive wounds from a knife attack, because all that was said in these ISP reports was that it wasn't consistent with a car accident. But I already showed you the Nez Perce County document where his injuries were consistent with a car accident. So I'd love to know this police report you're seeing that said he had defensive wounds from a knife attack.
His DNA was not on the sheath, Paige. His DNA was not on the sheath. Did you not hear this man? He has said it twice and explained it. His DNA was not on the sheath.
Why you always lying?
His DNA was on the sheath. His DNA was on the sheath. I don't care what Dr. Turvey says. His DNA was on the sheath. It's right here in this ISP forensic report. His DNA was on the sheath, Natasha. Say it with me. His DNA was on the sheath.
I have no reason to lie. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm not on anybody's side other than truth, justice, and the victims. Brian Kohberger is not my agenda. My agenda is making sure that the correct perpetrators are held accountable. All of them.
Why you always lying?